I'm Mary Reece from NJPSA and FEA, and we're here today on the second day of the fall conference sponsored by NJPSA, FEA, and ASCD. Today's keynote presenter is Dr. Tony Wagner from Harvard University, the author of this new book, Most Likely to Succeed, Preparing Our Kids for the Innovation Era. And I just wanted to ask him a few questions about the work that he's done and the kinds of thoughts that were presented this morning.
Great.
So I guess first I wanted to talk about the classrooms and schools that you depicted today. Those that are in conflict and comparison with traditional schools. Those that will prepare today's students to be the innovators that you mentioned in your book. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, very briefly. I described some 5 fundamental contradictions between the traditional culture of schooling, which, as you may know, evolved at the dawn of the industrial era, versus the culture of learning that develops the capacity to solve problems creatively, innovation. Contradiction 1 are all the ways in which we measure and reward individual achievement when teamwork is essential for innovation. Contradiction number 2, the ways we compartmentalize knowledge when in fact you need to use multiple disciplines to solve any problem or understand any big issue. Contradiction 3 is the culture of classrooms is often a culture of passivity and consumption, whereas the world of innovation is about creating, not consuming, taking initiative, acquiring content knowledge to solve a problem. Contradiction 4 is about failure, that we penalize mistakes in school. The more mistakes you make, the greater your penalty. Whereas in the world of innovation, that's how innovation happens. You make mistakes through trial and error, and you iterate. That's how you learn. That's, I think, also how we human beings learn many of our most important lessons. And the last contradiction is simply about motivation. Conventional schooling really relies heavily on extrinsic incentives to motivate learning, carrots and sticks. Whereas the world of innovation is a world that is far more focused on the intrinsic motivations. And I finally described the ways in which both parents and teachers had stimulated and reinforced intrinsic motivations through play, passion, and purpose.
You mentioned this is a culmination of many visits you've made and interviews you've conducted with students and teachers and CEOs of companies that are following in this path. Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Well, it began really with reading Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat, in 2005. And I'd long been interested in the relationship between the economy and education. But I suddenly began to realize this is the dawn of a very different era. And so I became interested in the question of how do business leaders see the skills that are most important and the gaps. So I did a wide variety of interviews, as you may know, which resulted in the book, The Global Achievement Gap, where I really discovered that there were a set of survival skills, I call it the 7 survival skills, that were absolutely critical for the future. But as I continued to have conversations with leaders increasingly around the world, I began to realize that skills weren't enough, that we have to understand that young people today need to not just have skills, but to be innovators, to be creative problem solvers. That those are the kids who are going to make the greatest contributions as citizens and also have the best opportunities for jobs. So my more recent inquiries have been about how do you teach the capacities for innovation, skills as well as dispositions, for example, risk-taking. Innovators take responsible risks and they learn through trial and error, but that's not what we do at school. So these are some of the things that I've been coming to understand and to learn about through my book, Creating Innovators, where I began by interviewing young people who are creative problem solvers. And more recently in my book with Ted Dintersmith, this one, Most Likely to Succeed.
I was very interested in your discussion that you started to address about assessment. And I would think it's about 13 or 14 years ago at our office, we housed the Performance Assessment Alliance, which was conducted by one of our colleagues, Willis Spicer. There were about 25 different teams from around the state that came together and developed performance assessments, research-based performance assessments, including rubrics, K-12 in all content areas, interdisciplinary performance assessments that were used and created tremendous excitement in our state, particularly with parent, student, and teacher engagement. It just changed the course of what we did. my school at the time, I was a principal, was involved, and we chose to do a butterfly garden, which was elementary, interdisciplinary, and it was just an amazing experience because it freed up the students to learn very differently, and it brought the students who were sort of on the fringe right into the middle because everyone was able to contribute in some way, shape, or form.
Of course.
Unfortunately, that was funded by the Department of Ed, federal and state funding, and the money dried up, and that was the end of the project. But with ESSA and the possibility of renewing this type of exciting assessment process in our state, I hope we move forward and are able to do that. But that was something that you touched upon.
Yeah.
So what's your sense?
Well, Mary, there was a lot of exciting work being done beginning in the early 90s. A lot of it, I think, stimulated by the work of the Coalition of Essential Schools led by Ted Sizer and others.
Sure.
And it wasn't just the money drying up, it was the fact that a wave of accountability came through with No Child Left Behind and then Race to the Top. And it was all about quantitative measurement and holding teachers accountable for what can be measured. And the problem is the things that we're describing, the ability to solve problems creatively, to think critically, to communicate effectively, and to collaborate. These are not things that are readily assessed by a standard multiple choice test. And so the exciting work that is being done now, and New Hampshire is a leader, they actually got a waiver under Arnie Duncan to work with districts to develop these same kinds of local performance-based assessments. The difference, though, in New Hampshire is that they're also working with business leaders. So that there's an alignment with the performance assessments that are in relation to the skills that kids are going to need for work in New Hampshire. And the exciting thing about ESSA is that now 7 states are going to, up to 7, are going to be allowed to do what New Hampshire's doing. And I had expressed the hope that New Jersey would be one of those. But you know, if these 7 states do this work well, next round there might be 14 or 28. I think this is the wave of the future, where we're developing performance assessments, but not in isolation. We're working with business and community leaders to identify the skills that matter most and to actually involve them in the assessment of the results. So when kids have to present and defend their work, let's bring in community leaders, let's bring in local business leaders and say, well, does this meet your standard for work and citizenship ready?
And that probably would contribute to its sustainability.
I no question about it.
Because if you have a broad sector of stakeholders,
Right.
It's more likely to continue rather than to die out.
Right.
Which, well, it'd be exciting if we in New Jersey would be part of that 7 pilot state
Right.
project. One of the other things we do here, thanks to the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation funding, is we have an arts integration plan and a project. We've done it for quite a few years, and we have teams come together in the summer at Princeton University, and then they're required to develop some type of interdisciplinary arts integration project through the year. And we give them a coach as well to work on the
wonderful.
facilitation. And when we saw the clip from your movie, it resonated very well at our table because yesterday, HOPACCON, which is one of the schools involved in our arts integration projects, they've been doing it for 3 years. They become a STEAM district, pre-K-12. And some of the examples that were in your video, we saw yesterday during their presentation here. And it's very exciting because the superintendent's here, central office, the principal, teachers, and board members have bought into this as well. And what they've done is provided common planning time, support financially for this.
Fabulous.
And I really like your idea of that performance coach concept. They have a STEAM facilitator who basically does the same work and brings together the teachers who are collaborating on these various projects. And we were at a gallery walk at the district last spring, and it was just amazing to see the engagement on the part of the teachers as well as the students. And I think they're really going to be able to sustain this effort because of the fact every layer of the community And also the municipality is supporting the endeavor.
Well, I think that's what it takes. You know, so often initiatives or innovations come and go with leadership change. I think you have to really embed an understanding of the need for a different kind of education in the community. I think you have to bring in the business leaders so that they're the ones who help people understand why STEAM is important. Why is it important to the future of New Jersey's economy or this municipality's economy or to the future of our planet? So the more we involve everyone in a conversation about the innovation era and what it requires of our students for work, for learning, and for citizenship, the more likely we can sustain this work.
It's exciting.
It is.
And I hope that, 10 years down the road, maybe you'll be back again and we can be talking about all the good things that have happened and are continuing to happen, which will be the test of your work.
Well, I look
certainly.
forward to it.
Well, thanks very much.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure. My pleasure.